The Art of Hobbiness. My name is Tam, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Erin Shimoni. And today we have a special guest, Dr. Kelly Kessler, who's actually a friend of the show. She has the brand Optimal You Health and Wellness. She is also the host of Rewiring Health Podcast, which is all about helping high-achieving women recognize and heal from dysfunctional patterns of self-abandonment and unrelenting stress. She is also really good about talking about nervous system regulation in self and kids, and honoring your own emotions as well as your kids' emotions. Welcome to the show, Kelly.
Welcome back, Kelly. We're so excited to have you today.
Excited.
Thank
you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So we were on her podcast recently, and we've connected through social media. So it's been really fun to
keep this relationship
to get to know
going.
each other. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
So we would love to start off by just having you tell us a little bit about your journey. I know you're a physical therapist by trade, but also doing some other work too. So you can tell us a little bit about that, what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm a physical therapist by trade, and really just found my place today in kind of that whole journey of realizing that I was just pursuing the next thing outside myself to feel like there was a sense of worth in myself, to feel like I was enough, what I was doing was enough. And I am just a very high achieving person by nature. So I'm like, okay, this isn't it. So I need to do more. Oh. And that just kept leading me down to another degree path, and got my doctorate, still felt that sense of emptiness within myself. And through that whole pursuit, I was, holding it together on the outside, but internally really struggling. And no one really saw that internal battle, but it was these sleepless nights, feeling stressed, the negative self-talk. And, it turned into chronic back pain in my early 20s, and just was really struggling through all that, and got to this point where I wish I figured it out earlier, but in my early 30s, there was a point where my husband and I were building our house. We were the general contractors. I was working as a physical therapist, driving an hour each way. And I was also working as a part-time adjunct professor at the same time. Wow. It was just I had a 9-month-old son, just the perfect storm.
Oh yeah.
And there was so much going on, and it was right before the pandemic, and actually it was during the pandemic, and I got furloughed from my job. And it became this big blessing because it just shut everything down. I had no other option but to face myself. And there was this moment just sitting on the floor with my 9-month-old, and I was there physically, but I'm like, my gosh, I have not been here. Where have I been? And emotionally and mentally, I was just so removed and disassociated from myself. And I just know how precious those moments are. And it was this grief of I don't want this to continue. I can't keep living like this. And it was really at that point I decided I'm going to make a shift. Had no idea what to do, how to change it, but I just knew I couldn't continue down that path, and was really that pivotal moment of choosing something different.
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't know all that about you. It gave me chills.
Just
very emotional. Yeah.
I feel like we've all can say that we've had that moment where we sat there literally looking at our children as these little things and realize, I'm not here. Where have I been? I'm just going through the motions because I'm just working so I had 110% on every aspect of my life, that you're not really present for everything. You're just doing the motions because that's what high achieving women do. Yeah. We bust our butt without really being there.
Yeah. And then putting on the face.
Right.
Yes. Everything's fine.
I'm so great. I'm doing great. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Gosh, which leads to obviously so many mental health issues and depression and burnout and everything. So I thank you for sharing that with us, because we can both a lot of us can relate to that. I know you talk a lot about self-abandonment, which goes along with that. And I guess we were talking about how do you define self-abandonment? I was curious. We were both talking about that, off the show. I don't know if you could.
Yeah. So it's prioritizing everything besides yourself. So it's silencing yourself and thinking others' opinions are more important. It's thinking others' desires and expectations for you are more important than your own. It is just doing and saying yes to everything because you think that's what's going to keep everything peaceful and harmonious. And that self-sacrifice of feeling like you are burning the candle at both ends, but there's no other choice but to keep going. And that you would rather face that internal resistance than to say no to somebody. And so that cycle, it just continues. And now that's where our health gets impacted and other things start getting impacted. But it's literally abandoning ourselves for
external thing.
For survival. And a lot of it's deep rooted. And that's what I've realized in my own journey. It's very deep rooted. It's not just like we choose to do this, like who would choose to actually self-sacrifice. It's that we create this sense of safety, quote, safety in ourselves by doing these things, because that feels safe when we are creating that sense of safety outside ourselves. So we're looking outside to be like, everyone's happy and peaceful. Okay, so I must be safe. But it's the other way around. We don't have enough safety within ourselves. And that's why we do these things.
That's a great way to look at it. I never really considered that. And now, I mean, that is kind of your mission in life now, to help other high achieving women to come out of this fog, right? And to like reclaim themselves. And so which speaks to all of us here.
Gosh, so here with the art of happiness, we can all relate.
Yes.
Well, and Erin and I were just talking about how like the holidays seems to be like a prime time for millennial women to have that self-abandonment, like really in full throttle. What do you have any advice that you would give to our listeners on how they can avoid that during this time?
Yeah, I think just one simple thing you can do is just take a quiet moment and ask yourself, what do I need? What do I need in this moment? It was a question I never asked myself because I was so worried about what everybody else needed. And so if you can just take a quiet moment and be like, okay, what do I need? And you may not have an answer because often you've been so disconnected from yourself. You may be like, I don't know what I need. I don't know what it is. But if you just allow yourself to ask that question, your brain will start to figure it out. So you'll get your subconscious mind going, and it may be a drink of water. It may be a walk outside, and maybe just taking a quiet moment away from the kids for a second, whatever it is. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing is just tune into your breath and your body. So you are in that survival mode. You're going all the time, and you are just keeping your body kind of disassociated from where you need to be. So if you can tune into your breath, take a few physiological sighs. So that's an inhaling through your nose. Take another little sip of air, and then slowly exhale as slow as you can. That will just allow you to transition your nervous system into a place of more harmony and just openness.
Oh, those are great tips. I love that. Thank you. So that's very tangible. I feel like with really, like when you said, like, ask for what you need or think about what you need or what you want, like I've, prior to us starting our podcast, that was a really hard thing for me to do personally. And I know that doing this, like, we're all about hobbies and trying new things and making time for ourselves, and just it's like practice, like practicing that, using that muscle, that mental energy. It's really like we found that doing that in the same way, trying new things, putting ourselves out there, making time for ourselves is helping to break out of that as well. Like just finding what you need, figuring out what you need. So I totally resonates with us.
Yeah. Well, and I really appreciated the fact that you validated that you might not know the answer when you sit there and do reflect on yourself, because I think in my early stages of this, like when I was doing that self-reflecting, I didn't know the answer and then was instantly like, I'm already failing it. And then just was like, never mind, I'll just go back to what I know how to do. And that's stay busy with everybody else instead of focusing on me. So just hearing you, somebody who's kind of seasoned in this and is coaching women in this, being able to say, you're not going to know the answer right away is kind of validating and comforting that like that's just part of the process, and like that's the first step in this, and that's comforting. It's really comforting.
Yeah, if you've been tuned out to yourself for so long, you can't expect yourself to have the answer all the time.
Right? No,
you got to tune back in, and that's like there's sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I need. And but it's truly the power of the brain. Just by asking yourself that question, it gets that subconscious mind going. So that's, just trust that it will come and you will figure that out. But 100%, it takes that practice.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, I know you're really busy with all that. What do you do for yourself personally, just for me time, aside from like those short moments? Do you have any hobbies outside of like, that you do take longer moments to do that?
Yeah, 100%. So, if you asked me this question 10 years ago, I'd be like, what are hobbies? Like, I had none.
Totally.
I remember asking myself, like, I remember after I graduated my doctorate and people were like, what do you do for fun? And I'm like, I have no idea. I had no answer.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I can definitely say that has changed. So one thing I love doing is making soap. So I like making my own soap. I'm very like more like holistic. I don't like chemicals in my stuff. So like by making my own soap, I know exactly what's in that. So that's been a really fun thing to do. I also got into painting. So it's something that I never really did, but then just kind of opened myself up to it. My husband like made this dating night one night, and he got canvases, and
That's fun.
we followed a YouTube video, we painted, and it was like, this is so fun. And so that kind of opened me up to like, oh, I can do this, you know, it might not be like the most beautiful thing, but like, it doesn't matter. It just was really nice moment. And so I still do that, and I've gotten better.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is really great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you talked about how like you didn't have hobbies and now you can say that you do. Do you feel like there was it natural for you to pick up hobbies when you first got into it because you've got a couple of them, or do you feel like it took some practice to get there?
It definitely took some practice because I was like so disconnected. All I knew is like study and then just rest. Like that was it.
Yeah.
And then like try to like function in life. So it took a while to be like, okay, what's fun for me? And like, you know, it was more like that curiosity initially of like, okay, like, no, that's not it. And like, and just dabbling in things. And, you know, I know we kind of talked about that on my show, but it's like, it's very uncomfortable to kind of step out of your comfort zone. So I did choose things that were more like, I can do this at home. Yeah. But now now that I've done that, like now I'm like, okay, what else can I explore? And so now I'm like willing to like go out of my comfort zone, which, you know, I don't know what my next hobby will be, but I'm much more willing to like go out of the comfort zone. But started the podcast. That's been, you know, it's been a passion. I love it. So that's been really awesome. And it's been so amazing to like incorporate these things and really connect again with myself. One thing that was really eye-opening for me as far as like a hobby was I was going through old papers in the basement, and like I'm talking like old, like when I was a kid, and I was looking through like, who was this girl, you know, and saw all these poems. Like I used to write poems all the time as a kid, like little stories and poems. And I'm like, you know, like maybe that's something I need to pull back into my life. So I've been starting to do that. Like I'll have a moment and feel like, you know, I just feel like you have a feeling or an emotion. I'm like, let me just write. And that's been really therapeutic for me to just put it on paper and like kind of tune back into that old version of myself. So I've been doing that too. And it's been really cool, like see what kind of comes through.
That is really cool. You know, we've touched on that, like this idea of checking back in with yourself as a child and what did you like to do, because that was like your true self, right? Before all this other stuff got in your way, like life got in your way. I think that's so awesome that you tap back into that. You know, that's something I've thought about before.
Yeah. Do you feel like that child like version of you that was doing that poetry, do you feel like you're reconnecting easier with that version of yourself through the poetry? Or do you feel like, do you see growth there and like change in the trajectory? How's that playing for you?
Yeah, such a good question. I feel like it really started opening up when like part of that self-abandonment practice is really connecting with your inner child and really like honoring them and like giving compassion to the past version of yourself that maybe you're really hard on. And so for me, writing again has really been like it's like really helped with that process of connecting with that version of me that felt like very free, and like really remembering back to like when I was like 9 or 10 and writing these things and just feeling like this like lightness about yourself and remembering like, oh, that's still there. Like, and
that's when life was like fun and free, right?
Yes. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's still there. Yeah. It's just, there's a lot of stuff on top, but like excavating. So it's helped, I think, with that excavation process of like, oh, I can live differently. I can tap into that past version of myself that has always been there, but I've kept her shuttered, you know, for a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, gosh, there's so much to say about it. You know, I think one thing I wanted to touch on that we had talked about too is just how does this help to regulate your nervous system, doing things like this and the hobbying and just the times of peace, you know, making time for those things. If you touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's huge. So that creative side of you is that like right brain that often is like, again, neglected because we're so left brain and, you know, structured and just do. But it's having that moment of like that creativity and bringing that back into your life. It opens up things for you and allows you to like take that space And just with your nervous system, when your brain when you realize that you're allowed to bring that creative side into you, it teaches your brain that you are safe in that moment. Because again, if you weren't safe, do you think your brain would be like, oh, how can I be creative in this moment? Like, no. So again, it allows your system to shift from like that sympathetic fight, flight, freeze to more of like that parasympathetic rest, digest, restore, because your brain is learning that like, oh, this is space created for me. It allows me to have this in my life. And if it's planned and you do it more consistently, you as a whole realize like, I'm not just a drill sergeant. I'm not just doing like, I will build this into myself and honor myself. So there's a lot of that like stress reduction and nervous system regulation that comes in when you do incorporate these. And I realized that myself in doing that. I always feel lighter after I do any kind of like hobby.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely feel like you can't deny the benefits that you feel after trying to prioritize that hobby or self-care time. Like I don't feel like in the beginning I felt them as strongly as I do now, because I think I was still fighting those challenges of guilt for taking the time, or I was still going, oh, I should maybe do the dishes instead of do this. But as I've continued to practice, I feel like you used a great word that I never considered, and it was safe. Like, I think
that resonated with me too.
Yeah. I did. I never thought about it feeling like, but you're right. Like when you're in this high achieving performance world, it really is fight or flight. And I guess I never really put it in those terms. And so, like, you're right. How could I possibly feel creative or be willing to try something that I wouldn't think I would be successful in right away, because I would be like scared that like it could be so catastrophic. But then like getting yourself practiced and getting into that safe zone, that word that you use that I really like am hanging on to is it's really powerful. You know, I think you're right. I feel like, of course you're going to feel creative when you're safe. And now it's making me like think about like my kids, like they're always being creative. So should I look at that as I'm creating a safe space for them, which they feel like they can do that? And I feel like that's something for me to walk away and think about.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like one of those things we can learn from our kids, like how creative, like you give them a box and it's like 7 different scenes, you know, like they can turn anything into something creative. And it's like, it's so beautiful to watch that, because we still have that within us. But I think it's just like that, you know, so many things get accumulated and these expectations that we often just put on ourselves that we can't do that. Or we have a belief system that like, that was the past version of myself. No, it can still be your current version.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. It doesn't have to be this past you. Like, of course we all evolve. And of course we're all like, you know, going into different eras, you know, just keeping up with the times and the language. But I feel like there's still that core value of you, that core person of you who's still there, just going, just come visit again. Yeah. I want to do some poetry, girl. Let's do it together. We've seen some stuff.
Do you find that you, do you have just one child, or do you? Two. Yeah.
Do you, 2 boys.
Do you share your hobbies with them? Do they do it with you at all? Or is it,
So actually like 2 weeks ago I made soap, and so my older son, he's 5, and he's like, can I do it with you? So like I got him involved. I'm like, what colors do you want to do? So he like picked out pink and blue, and he like got the colors. He picked out the mold, and so like he had a really good time. Now he uses the soap in his bathtub.
That's amazing. Yeah,
so it's really cute. So yeah, he gets involved in that. Another thing I just thought of too, like I actually bought this for him, but like I like end up having fun with it. But a finger piano.
Piano?
Yes.
I just saw this. Piano? It's like a little piano just for your finger. I saw a Taylor Swift one recently.
Oh, really?
It was just Taylor Swift. So anyway, go ahead.
So funny. I just found on Amazon. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'll get it. So I bought it for him. Like he's probably a little young for it, but I was like, So I like taught myself to like play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on it. And
I love it.
Really fun. So like that's another thing. But like and then he like has fun with it. Like there's a metal hammer that comes with it, so he'll like hit it with that. And now my 2-year-old is in like destructo mode with it, so I don't know how long it's gonna last. But
it's so true. I'm gonna need you to learn Jingle Bells, and then if you could like get a clip for us and send it to us, please.
There you go.
That'd be awesome.
I would really love it just for the holidays. I think I gotta tell you, like, I keep getting excited that you talk about making soap because I think that's gonna.
It's on your list.
Well, to keep this show going, I gotta try them all, right? So that's on my list. So I'm probably gonna be coming back to you and asking you for some tips, like, what did you buy as like your starter kit? Like, did you piece together some stuff? Like, what were some of the challenges? In fact, if you just even want to tell me about those now.
Yeah, 100%. So there's a next step to it that I haven't gotten to yet, but you can actually do it from the actual components of like lye and fats and stuff like that. But apparently, like the lye, when you heat it up, can be very toxic. So I haven't gotten to that point because I got to learn how to do that before I like put myself in a toxic environment. But so what I do now is just buy the blocks, and then you cut them down, and you can get like goat's milk soap, or there's like almond milk. There's all kinds of like different soaps. So you break them down, and then there's like these powder dusts that I buy, and then I have essential oils, and then the mold. So that's really all you need.
That's not too hard.
And,
yeah, that seems pretty.
It's funny because like I actually had my friends come over. It was like last Christmas. I'm like, instead of getting gifts, let's all like buy a block of soap and we'll all make soaps togetger. So we had
what a great idea. Yeah, that is a great idea.
Yeah, and now they bought their own stuff. And they do their own so it's super easy. Like, it's not like it's really hard. Like, you just break it up, you melt it, and you pour all this stuff in it, and you make whatever things you want, and then you just have your soap. Like, it's not hard, but it's just really like, it's fun. Like, I enjoy it and I use it. And like, for me, I don't like stuff sitting around. So like, I like crafts that I can do that I'm not just like accumulating things in my house.
Yeah, so smart.
Yeah, definitely.
So soap has been a good one. Another one, I was talking to my friend about this morning, but I actually make scrubs too. So
great.
I'll take like coconut oil, essential oils, and like sugars, mix them up. You can add like coffee grinds into it.
Oh yeah.
And make your own scrubs.
That's such a great idea.
Too.
Yeah,
I
like that.
I actually think we had a friend a couple of years ago that made scrubs as a gift for all of us, and I remember really liking that actually as a gift because it was like, it felt very like natural, and it was actually a really thoughtful gift because they took the time to make that.
I didn't know that didn't know it would be that simple actually.
Yeah, actually.
So I appreciate you sharing that with us because that seems like I could do that.
I know. I'm like, that's it. That's gonna be my next hobby.
And I guess the materials are not that. It sounds like probably not very expensive, any of that.
No, it's cheap. The essential oils, I mean, I like to use the ones that are like more natural. So there's different versions. So that's probably the most expensive, but you're only using a few drips. But I mean, you can get the coconut oil tub at Costco for like $20.
Yeah.
Like, it's not. And like sugar, I mean, you could go to town on it. And then you just get like mason jars, put them in there, and you're good. But I've done it for gifts too. Like, I've made that like a few years ago. I made it and like gave it as gifts, and it's just like, it's really nice because like, you know exactly what's in it, and you're not having the chemicals on you.
Way to tie in Christmas and hobbies.
I mean, we're really just covering it all. This is like an all-inclusive episode.
I love it.
So what is one piece of advice that you would give to a woman who is ready to stop self-abandoning and is ready to just start on her hobby self-care journey?
Yeah, I would say start small and give yourself some grace. Yes. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like, that was for me. It was like, I was like all or nothing. So I was like, I have to do all this. And then it would feel so intimidating to like try to carve out that time in my schedule and make this big change. And so that never worked for me. The big things that worked was like, okay, how can I show up for myself for 1 minute today? Like 1 minute. And then I'm going to celebrate myself that I took 1 minute for myself. And then maybe next week I'll do 2 minutes. And that's really how it started, was these like little things that you think are so like negligible. But that's really how it starts, is like building up small. So if you're starting a hobby or you're just trying to work on self-care, like take the tiniest bit of time that you can right now in your life, do it, use it, and then celebrate yourself for it, because that celebration creates the momentum. And then it's like a big boulder. That boulder's been stuck in a place for a very long time. It's going to take some effort to get it moving. But if you can move it just a little bit, once it gets rolling, that momentum is unstoppable.
That's such a good tip.
It's a great analogy. And
because I feel like I never thought about just doing just a couple like incremental minutes and then like progressing up to it. I remember this one time, I'll even tell you why this is impactful for me, is so my husband does Dungeons and Dragons, and so he'll be gone for a couple hours like once a month. They get together once a month. And there was one time where I just didn't have the kids with me, so I was like, yes, me time. Do you know how little you can do in 5 hours if you don't have a hobby or
like aren't planning for it?
Planning, or don't know what self-care is in your life? Because it was literally me just sitting there twiddling my thumbs, and I just felt so overwhelmed by the amount of time that was available to me and had little to even bring to the table for that time. It felt like an eternity. I think I just watched the clock. I just watched the clock come down, and then I think
you drank some wine, right?
I did drink some wine. There's always wine.
I feel like
Help the clock go a little faster.
Speed up time a little
but
bit.
it's just we don't get that time to ourselves. It's very rare, and when we do have it, and now we have more tools in our toolbox, and we're more prepared for that.
But what a great way to start.
It is a void.
Kind of a stress response.
Definitely.
That's why you get into like that freeze of like, I don't know what to do myself.
And I generally default to, or at least previously did, is like cleaning and doing chores. I'm like, I'm going to get all this stuff done. At least then I'll feel accomplished, right?
Yeah.
But then I didn't do anything for myself.
No.
You know?
You're like, well,
and then the guilt sets in for not doing anything.
Sure. Or then even the resentment, because it's like, oh, you got to go off and have fun. Well, I stayed home and cleaned the house.
Right.
Well, he didn't tell me to do that. Nobody told me to do that. That's just what I did because I didn't know or have anything to do for myself. And then how is that helping my marriage? It's not helping it at all. If anything, I'm just turning into a Scrooge, just using that word for the holiday season. How about that?
That's right.
This is now a Christmas episode.
Like we need a drum set for every time like we're making here today.
I do have a serious question for you. So it's talking about cleaning the house. So this is something that I feel like comes up with a lot with women, is this like idea that like women like to organize and like that's their hobby. What would you, because like I feel like I fall in that category. Like I feel like I generally get pleasure out of cleaning the house. Like I like the end product, right? But it's not really helping, like fulfilling me necessarily, but I can't really separate that out. And I see this a lot, I think, with women. It's like, what advice would you give to a woman who feels like organizing and cleaning is their self-care? Can it be, or is that just they're clouded by, they don't know what they actually want? Does that make sense? Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So it's not necessarily like the behavior that you do, but it's how are you feeling while you're doing it and after you're doing it. And a big way you can differentiate that is like tune into your body. So when you're doing it, do you feel a little lighter? Do you feel like you're in connection with your heart? Like, can you just like tune into that? Does your body feel a little loose, and like that, and lighter while you're doing it or afterwards? So if it does, then that's fine. That's totally fine. But are you doing it because you feel like you should, or you like, if I don't do this, then there's consequences? Or do you feel like, like I will only feel good about myself if this is done? Like, are you tying your worth to it? So I don't think it's necessarily like the behavior that you engage in. I think it's the deeper response of like the emotions you're feeling. So you want to have those higher vibration emotions, which can be like peace, even neutrality can be fine, or joy, whatever those are. If you're feeling some realm of neutral to higher emotions, go with it. If it's bringing you down where there's like a shame, a guilt, a fear, or just like a kind of an anxious energy there, that's probably you just not compensating, but like giving into those like deep-seated beliefs that you're only worthy when you're productive. You're only worthy when you're doing. So it's really just getting to know yourself. And that can be really hard to differentiate in the beginning because when you are disassociated from yourself and you're used to just doing that, it can be hard of like, okay, I feel good right after, but then you're depleted. So see how you feel in the long run. Like when you do it after and then a few hours after, do you feel the residual effects of either lightness or still that heaviness and stress kind of feeling?
I like the way you break that down, because I never really thought about that just in general with activities, like thinking, like really checking in with yourself to see if like you enjoyed it, like before, during, and after. I really like that.
Yeah, I think that was a really good point to make. I really appreciate you with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a big thing you can get lost in, because sometimes like for some people, like writing would be like, this is the worst thing ever, but for other people, it's really therapeutic. So it's not about what you're doing. It's all the impacts of it. And it all comes down to like that emotional well-being. And that's our body's language. So our body will tell us how that's responding.
That's great. Being in tune with yourself. It really is like a key like component to the self-care process, right? You really just need to stop for a moment and ask yourself questions,
Yeah, I love that.
Great points.
Yeah.
Gosh, you're just so wonderful
you are.
to talk to.
Full of information.
You have
I love it.
really great tips. I really feel like our listeners will really benefit from like hearing about you. Can you tell us or tell our listeners where they can find more of you?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on my website. It's optimalyou.com, or under all social media under Dr. Kelly Kessler. And then also my podcast, Rewiring Health.
Which we're on. So you can always start by finding an episode of us on there.
That's right. Well, we really,
fun episode.
Yeah. And we loved having you again today and talking with you more. So really appreciate your time, and thanks for coming on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Bye, Kelly.
Bye, Kelly.
Bye,
yeah, bye. Thank you for listening to The Art of Hobbiness. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And for more Erin and Tam fun, be sure to follow us on all socials for behind-the-scenes footage on our journey to find hobbiness.